So, welcome everybody to Achieving Higher Profit Margins by Selling Security as a Service. I'm Caitlin McCochran, Auvik's event manager. And before I hand over to our presenters for today, I just want to run through a few housekeeping things so everyone has an awesome experience during this webinar. First, if you can't hear, please check your computer's audio or view your settings. Also, we want this to be an interactive presentation. So please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box and our presenters will answer them during and after the presentation. Also, this webinar will be recorded and posted on auvik.com/frankly-MSP as soon as possible. Usually is up within a few hours in case you wanted to circle back on anything that we shared today. So I wanted to introduce Auvik's Director of Systems Engineering, Steve Petryschuk, and Andy Cocking, Director of Sales at Barracuda MSP. They're teaming up to talk about how you can sell your clients on security offerings within their managed services budget at low or no cost to your MSP.
Awesome. Thanks, Caitlin. Steve Petryschuk here. So just before we dive into a bit of an intro and into the content, just what we'll be talking about today, how to sort of navigate opportunities and challenges in selling security, how sort of networking best practices can help you build a baseline for your security program, increase your service margins, and really how to package and position your security as a service offering. Making small steps like security or vulnerability assessments, two-factor authentication, and those type of things can really sort of get that program started. And of course, Q&A throughout. So I know that both Andy and I are open to questions as we run along here. So use the Q&A panel as well as the chat panel if you want to engage with us. So quickly, just to kick things off, I want to share a little bit about Auvik and myself and then pass it over to Andy here. So if you're not familiar with Auvik, who we are, cloud-based network monitoring and management. We're headquartered in Waterloo, Canada, over 160 employees, 2,500 partners, and that little guy in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen here is our polar bear mascot. His name is Nanook. And your piece of trivia for today, if you ever get asked, well, what does Nanook mean? All it means is polar bear in the Inuit language. So our polar bear is named Polar Bear. Who am I? My name's Steve. I've been leading our sort of what we call our systems engineering team at Auvik for the last few years. I've been with Auvik for about 4 years, joining in a sales capacity and now moving into more of a technical sales capacity. So what that means is, I lead our pre and post sales engineering team, our technical training team, and sales enablement. So definitely touch a lot of spaces here at Auvik and really enjoying the ride. I want to hand it over to Andy to introduce himself quickly.
Thanks, Steve. So my name's Andy Cocking. I'm a sales director for Barracuda MSP. I've been with the business for about a year now, and previous to that, I owned and ran an MSP in the UK. I did that for about 20 years, so I started quite early. We grew the business from about 2 to about 65 people. We did a merger, and I exited just over a year ago through an MBO. During my time there, I had a very wide range of experience, from being reasonably technical right through to being sales driven. I dealt a lot with setting up commercials, managed service reps. We made an awful lot of decisions based on good data that we were getting out of our computer systems. I also want to tell you a little bit about Barracuda. So Barracuda are a large IT security business. They've been around for 20 years. Within the next 5 years, their aim is to be a $1 billion business with 150,000 customers worldwide. Within Barracuda, there is a smaller division called Barracuda MSP, which was started around 5 years ago. It's based outside of North America. It's based in Reading. We have a large North American contingent as well. I'm based out of the Reading office in the UK, and we look after the rest of the world, excluding APAC. The team is small. There's 20 people. It's very friendly, very straightforward to deal with, and we are experiencing very high growth at the moment through acquisitions and through natural growth. So in front of you is a range of the different products Barracuda can offer, from various backup solutions, so Intronus Backup and Barracuda Backup. They also offer email security, firewalls, web security gateways, which are content filters, and they offer some new products, so Sentinel and Fishline, which are all aimed at protecting customers from phishing attacks, which are incredibly prevalent right now. They also have an endpoint content shield and an RMM tool, so remote monitoring and management, which was acquired from Avast about a year ago. It's called Barracuda Managed Workplace.
Well, so just to start to jump into the content a bit, we talk a little bit about introducing our companies and some of the products and services we have to offer. And I think before we dive into how we can start to apply some of those to this selling security as a service, we should take a step back and sort of start with the why, right? Like why you should be building out a security program, why this is important. And ultimately, the answer is pretty well as simple as you think, right? We should be doing it because there's money in it, right? Our clients are talking about it. They're talking about security. They're being impacted by security events. They need it. Most SMBs aren't really prepared to defend themselves in a cyber attack. So there's a lot of opportunity here, right? Ever increasing number of security breaches. I'm not going to splash a ton of figures on how many breaches are out there. There's, I guess every site has a different figure, but it's increasing and there's a lot happening. And so ultimately, security is something that our customers are paying attention to, and there's an opportunity in it. So it's definitely something that we should be doing. And I guess the next question is like, how big is the opportunity?
It's pretty big. We're seeing a massive amount of demand right now. I think by 2022, demand for managed security services will grow at a compound annual rate of 16% to become a $40 billion market. That's a huge, huge market. So I wanted to talk about some of the advantages of selling security as a service. I think cloud adoption is growing. It's growing really quickly, and in the climate we're in currently, we've seen that begin to grow even more quickly as we see more people working from home, more people working perhaps independently from their teams. So having a centralized environment where people can access it from anywhere is vital. There's a competitive advantage to MSPs when they're selling security. It's complicated. It's a difficult thing to enter into when you haven't got any past experience. So we see MSPs who are upskilling their staff having a competitive advantage against everybody else in their industry. The other point I'd like to make is that security services are really scalable. Loads of them have got very, very low overheads. So we're seeing a very large number of products coming to the market, which you don't need to employ teams of people to manage. A lot of them self-manage, a lot of them self-remediate, and they're all designed to add significant value to your product portfolios. So you can automatically generate reports and send them to your clients, and that will mean that they're very sticky and they will stay with you. There are also some challenges. So obviously keeping up with technology is difficult. It moves really, really quickly, and trying to keep that competitive advantage involves you trying to keep up. And I think having a vendor who partners with you and offers you the support that you need in terms of training and even taking some of the weight from you is really important. I was a customer, so when I was running my MSP, I was a customer of Barracuda, and I was a customer with lots of other vendors too. And I found that the ones that really added value to me were the ones that truly built a partnership. So they had teams of people who were friendly, who wanted to engage with me, and they wanted to understand my business. One of the reasons I came to work with Barracuda is because I feel that's what they can offer. And so as technology was changing, they were constantly pushing me to keep up and asking lots of questions, and they were constantly pushing new products in my direction and forcing me to kind of keep up as well. Upskilling your staff can be really tough. People who can offer you training for free and hold your hand while you learn are really, really important. And the other thing is finding the right kind of customers as well. So there's lots of customers out there who just want a really cheap deal, and there are other customers actually who are looking for perhaps a little bit more of that. Maybe they've gone for the cheapest deal and haven't had the greatest experience, and they'll be in the marketplace actually looking for something that does a bigger job, and they'll understand a bit more about the market as a space. In my experience, a well-built stack of products will allow you to get interest in those customers who kind of know a little bit about more what they're looking for, and it will allow you to keep them as well, and potentially even upsell to them, so you can kind of give them a journey to come along with you, and they'll begin to understand why you're doing what you're doing in the security space.
So I guess the idea that there's a lot of opportunity there, and that there's some challenges that a lot of service providers face when they start to get started on a security program. And so I often, the slide sort of gives away the punchline here, but I often start to ask, where should we start, and where should we, where should a service provider begin building a security program? And what I typically recommend is start to build a framework sort of around best practices. And you can see here we're sort of using the CIS critical security controls for the purpose of today's session. But really, the idea here is that we find some sort of best practice framework that you can start to build your security organization around. So I've been working with the CIS critical security controls, or what they used to be called the SANS Top 20, for about 9 or 10 years now. Previous to Auvik, I was in a IT security VAR, so it's sort of been an area that I've been familiar with for about the past decade. And what I love about frameworks like this is that they're basically a number of key guidelines, right? It's not always a hey, here's a point product and here's the next point product. It's all about doing sort of a continuous evolving action to continually get better on in the security realm. So as an example, the CIS critical security controls have 20 key actions that organizations should take to implement, to block or mitigate known attacks, to reduce risk. And ultimately, a lot of these key actions end up being a lot of best practices. And so some of them are things that you're going to be doing already, or you can do really easily. And some of them are things that you can build upon. So using sort of a stack security framework to start to improve the security for your clients overall. So it's all incremental, right? Within each one of these controls, you can start small and build upon previous efforts to continuously improve the security of your clients' networks. So what I'll sort of take through a bit is how Auvik can help you sort of get started with what I would call sort of like that base level of security in terms of these critical security controls, just to start practicing a lot of good network hygiene and good security hygiene practices. So these 20 critical security controls are 20 things you can do. Some are network related, some are data related, some are endpoint related, but there are 7 things that Auvik can do to sort of help you get started on fulfilling these 20 controls. And so we'll focus on those 7. And again, it all boils down to good security hygiene, right? And this becomes sort of that base level of security offering that every one of your clients can get. And we can help you get significant efficiencies in automating some of these steps so you can start to increase margins. So first, so our first rule of security is you can't protect what you can't see, right? So needing an inventory and control of all hardware assets. So I need to be able to actively inventory, track, correct hardware devices on the network so that only things that I know about and that I've allowed on the network are given access. So anything that's unauthorized or unmanaged, I can find them, I can discover them, I can start to ask my client, hey, should these be part of our managed service offering or should they not be on the network? And so you can identify those unknown and unsecured devices because those are ultimately a pretty easy attack vector for someone that's looking to compromise the client's network. And so I'll go back to the, you can't protect what you can't see. And if you can't see things on the network, that you're gonna have a tough time protecting it. So this is sort of, that critical security control number 1. It's just having a handle on everything that's out there. And Auvik can help give you that visibility. The next is on sort of the data recovery capability side. So everyone's pretty familiar with backup and disaster recovery. We've probably become a little bit more familiar with our disaster recovery plans over the past few weeks in this sort of COVID-19 world that we're living in now. But the idea here is that we spend a lot of time protecting the end data, right? So backing up servers, backing up workstations, but ultimately we also need to pay attention to ensuring the network remains up and stable and running. And so if things go wrong on the network and a client site is breached, you have to mitigate for the loss of data about network configs as well. So, and this is where our up-to-date backup of network configs can sort of help give you that baseline of security to say, hey, I've at least taken that baseline of network device configs so that if something was to happen, I can restore to those backups and get things back up and running quickly. So, taking that automated backup, you don't have to worry about it on a monthly basis or quarterly basis. Just, let Auvik do the work, allows you to sort of increase your bottom line by spending less time and effort in providing this service to your client. One of the great things about this too is that there's actually a capability to alert on a change in the configuration. So you can see here the change on the screen is basically someone's enabling S-Flow on this device. If I didn't approve that change, or if that wasn't a change that I initiated, and I start to get an alert that says, hey, someone made this change, if it happens at 2 in the morning and I didn't make a change at 2 in the morning, I'll get an alert to notify me to say, hey, something's up, something's changed in the network, and I know that I do need to address something here. So the next critical control is continuous vulnerability management. So with Auvik, you're going to really stay on top of firmware updates. And that's the whole idea behind this vulnerability management, right? So it's being able to acquire, assess, and take action on new information to identify vulnerabilities, to remediate them, to minimize the window of opportunity for attackers. Because ultimately devices that are outdated on firmware typically have known vulnerabilities. These aren't 0 days, these aren't something brand new. It's something that has been known about sometimes for months, sometimes for years. We just haven't necessarily updated. So we need to make sure that we get visibility into what software and firmware versions are out there running in my environment so that I can actually keep my clients' networks up to date. And again, this goes back to that good security hygiene kind of chat from before, right? It's all something that we know we should be doing, right? We should be keeping firmware up to date, but it's one of these things that we need to call out as part of the service offering and sort of call out as part of our security offering, because it is delivering value to the end client. So with Auvik, we're going to automatically collect and inventory all the different software versions and firmware versions on the network. You can correlate that with vendor information to identify things that are really far behind. And for certain devices, like you can see on the right-hand side here, we have a number of Cisco devices listed there. And so using the Cisco Service API, we're actually able to go out there and discover all the different end of support devices. So if it's something that's out of support, end of software maintenance, we can identify that and give you sort of an opportunity to go out there and update it or sell new hardware. And we have a lot of partners who are using this to actually lead in their security offering to say, come in, do a bit of a network assessment, lead with some of this, hey, I found all these vulnerable devices on your network, and it gives them an opportunity to start to sort of position their security offering first. The next critical control would be the secure configuration of network devices. So once we know that they're up to date on firmware, we got to make sure that they're actually configured securely and configured properly. I don't want someone to compromise the network and then start to make changes to network devices unexpectedly. So the idea here is that you're establishing and implementing and managing security configuration on network infrastructure. So I like to often rhetorically ask here, who's ever set up a firewall with a default password, right? And I expect, no one's going to say, oh, I've done that, although there might be a few people that have. But something like a switch, we may plug in and just because it works, just leave it, right? But this is still a sort of vulnerable area that we can help a lot of our clients improve their security posture by just changing default passwords, right? And even if they're changed from default, am I rotating them regularly? Am I ensuring that different credentials are used on different devices? So that's where Auvik can really jump in. It can help to identify credentials that may be reused as sort of the top screenshot here. If I'm using the same credential across multiple devices and that credential is compromised, someone's now able to get access to multiple devices using one credential. Great for ease of management, not so great as we sort of progress down that security maturity model within the critical security controls. Second part, just finding devices that have default community strings or default passwords. So things that are using admin or Cisco. So just getting some visibility into those. And again, like the hardware devices I was just talking about that might be out of date, a lot of our partners are going to use this to start to lead with their security offering as well. Hey, look at all the devices I found on your network just using default passwords. Look at all the devices that are using default passwords in your network. Let me own and manage that for you. And it's a way to start to lead with that security offering. Next control is all about controlling access based on the need to know. So Auvik can help you ensure that only the right people within your organization and the right people at the client site have access to the devices that they need. The whole idea here is that you're not giving right access to absolutely everyone, because that's generally not needed for most people. So with Auvik, you're in control, right? You're going to be able to track, control, prevent, and correct access to these critical assets. You can give one of your technicians access to just the 5 clients that they work with and not everyone. If you have a client that wants access to their own site, you can let the client see that site without making any changes or making a change to the configuration. And same thing with the remote management capability. So being able to dive in and manage devices without having to necessarily see credentials will sort of allow you to retain control of those shared accounts that you're using. Next, sort of account monitoring and control. The whole idea here is that you need to get visibility into when accounts are created, put dormant, when they're deleted, and when they're used. And to make sure that they're used by the person that we think are using them. And so this is where something like two-factor authentication comes in. So, well, we're not necessarily a two-factor authentication solution. We have that base covered by ensuring that people that are accessing the Auvik platform, are sort of authenticated with two factors to make sure that the person logging in, controlling access, managing your network is the person that they say they are. And so this is a great thing that, in general, if you're not using 2FA, that's somewhere where you can start to really improve the security posture for yourself and for your clients. And again, goes back to sort of that good security hygiene that we talked about early on. And so the last one that sort of Auvik helps with is the maintenance monitoring and analysis of audit logs. Like, who likes reading through logs? No one, right? Who's looking for that needle in the haystack? No one. If you are, I guess a little pat on the back there. But the whole idea here is that being able to collect, manage, and analyze log events can help you detect and recover from attacks. So we want to be able to see within Auvik a complete history of everyone that's accessed the network devices. We're launching more and more of these audit logs over time, so you can start to see what changes people are making within Auvik. And you'll start to see over the next bit of time is that we're introducing syslog capabilities, so we can see not only what people are doing in Auvik, but what's happening on other devices as well, to sort of give you visibility into what happened on the network, why it's happening, both from a troubleshooting as well as being able to retain some logs for that period of time to identify events that probably shouldn't be happening. So these things are all sort of the baseline, right? Like, a lot of what we talked about are sort of security best practices, network best practices. They're all the things that like your clients sort of need to be doing, right? They're all things that should be part of that baseline. But I think we should start to look at, well, how do I build above the baseline, right? How do I make sure that I have, more than one security offering? How can I start to look at something like stack security bundles to help improve the overall security of my clients away from this baseline and continue to sort of improve and evolve over the sort of through those 20 critical controls. So Andy, I think that's where the security bundles really fits in, right?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Okay, so I thought I'd spend a bit of time just talking about how this works in practice. So before I used to run an MSP, and I used to go out to market, and I would have a big menu of different products and services. We used to do tech support, we used to sell hardware, we used to do networking, all sorts of different things. And what I realized was that over time, I found that some customers would take bits. Lots of customers just had no idea of the things that I did. So I tried to make it really simple. And by doing that, I started to compress and combine all of the different things I did into bundles. And that evolved a bit further into stacked service offerings. So we figured out that lots of people would want an Office 365 license, for example. Actually, an awful lot of people would also need some email security and some backup to go with that. If you have all three boxes and present it to them, the immediate idea is that they would look at it and they would say, oh, hang on a minute, do I really need email security? Do I really need backup? And from the MSP's point of view, you could bundle that into one bundle of core services and say to them, actually, if you don't want email security and you don't want backup, actually, probably we aren't going to work this out, because you're going to be too much of a risk to me as a business. Because if you haven't got those real basic core offerings, you're going to be attacked and you're going to have some problems. And then if you're on my tech support bundle, I'm going to have to come and fix them, and I'm not going to be able to bill for that. It's just extra risk for me. If you go out to market and approach customers who are willing to pay for the bundle of services, and it's often not a lot of extra money, then all of a sudden you've got much less risk with your customer base. You're attracting stickier customers, because if they go out to market and they try and compare an Office 365 license with bundled security, it's much harder than going out to market and just comparing Office 365 license and saving a few quid a year. So if you have a bundle of services, it just makes it a little bit more special for you as a business to offer. You can then go in and say, actually, there is a core offering, and this is how much it costs. This is what we're going to do for it, and you'll get some customers who are just happy with that. At some point, they will probably want to look at other things that you do. So it's nice to have a next step from that point, and that's where the enhanced bundle of services came in. So then you've only got two options on your menu rather than 50, and it's very easy for people to understand. So there's an enhanced bundle, and it might contain just a bit more. So you could have some training in there. You could have some automated remediation. So perhaps you'd have some patching and some health check reporting. And the reporting is nice because it shows that you're doing something for the money you're being paid. So you're giving them a report every month, which often is almost completely automated. And you give that to the customer, maybe by email, and they can check that you've run some backup tests and that their backup's definitely going to restore if they need it. and that you're doing virus checks where you said you would. And it means that you're on their radar a bit, and they're not going to, in 2 years' time, say, well, hang on a minute, I don't really know why I'm paying you guys anymore, and then end your service. So I thought I'd do some practical examples using some Barracuda software. So Barracuda have obviously don't provide Office 365 or other cloud-based service licenses. So you go and buy that from whoever your distributor is, or perhaps from your direct relationship with Microsoft or Google, and then you could then bundle in a very basic email security service. So Barracuda have a product called Barracuda Essentials, and it's a gateway defense product. So it defends your email as it comes in through the MX records. It does all the scans that you'd expect, and there's a sandbox at the bottom, which will then check for any files very quickly. It's quite a cost-effective product. Most people will understand how it works. If you bundle that into your service, it's a good first step. Barracuda also offer a product called Sentinel, and that's much more advanced. So that's about phishing protection. It's an API-based defense. So rather than sitting in the MX stream and monitoring emails as it comes into your email box, it plugs in at the bottom and it looks at all of the email history, and it begins to build a profile about the email boxes. And it looks for things like account takeover, and it will check that the profile of written emails is similar. So emails that are being sent is similar to those that have been sent previously. If you get someone who then tries to take over an account, the difference in the way that they make up language will be recognized, and their email will be defended. So again, you could bundle that in as your enhanced offering, and you could say to customers, well, actually, you can go a step further. Perhaps if a customer gets a bad experience, or even if they get attacked, you can say to them, actually, there is plenty of software out there to do this, and this is what we offer. And you could also white label it, so you don't necessarily have to go to a customer and say, this is a Barracuda product. You could go and say, this is the partner I've chosen to work with. We have a very good relationship, and we're confident that they can fix your problem for you. I'd say the final element, I think, in anything that I would do that would be enhanced would to include some training. So Barracuda Phishline is a product which actually tests end users by sending them pretend phishing attacks, and it will record the clicks, and it will record what happens when the user receives that email, and then it will report back. So potentially you can then go and look at who needs some training. You can look at specific people who might need some help in recognizing phishing emails, and you can also actually figure out who the most vulnerable people are in an organization. Barracuda have got a number of tools which help you do that. So within Sentinel is something called the email threat scanner. It's an automated scan. You connect Barracuda's threat scanner to a customer's Office 365 tenant, and then again it uses the APIs to scan all the email boxes, and it looks for advanced threats. So it will look for spear phishing attacks, and it prepares a report. So it will do things like it will tell you who gets the most attacks in an organization, and potentially who you may want to go and talk about providing a Phishline license to. So it gives you a really good excuse to go in and have a conversation about ways that you can actually help the customer. And also you get this great looking report where you can go and say, actually, you've definitely got a problem. You can't say that you don't get any phishing attacks, because here they all are. And this was actually done to me when I was a customer. So Barracuda scanned me, and we found out that somebody in our organization, I think it was our finance director, was the most vulnerable, and he was receiving lots and lots of attacks every day. And he was just ignoring them. And I thought, God, if someone senior in a business is receiving that many attacks, it's going to be just an amount of time until they fall for it. It's a huge risk for me. So we went out and employed Sentinel to defend us, and it worked fantastically. Barracuda also have another assessment tool. So they have something called Managed Workplace, which is an RMM tool, and you install an endpoint client onto a network, so onto some computers in a server, and it will make an assessment of the network. So it will scan all the servers, and it will very quickly identify any issues. So they could be to do with patching, they could be to do with firewalls or antivirus or Windows updates. There are hundreds of different criteria, but it will provide a nice report that you can again give to your end user and say, actually, these are the problems on your network. It's a fantastic way of winning business. And you can use these tools to go and meet new customers, or to enhance what you're doing with existing customers as well.
Andy, maybe a quick question for you on that. If you just
of course.
Back up a second. So we think about using some of these tools to do an assessment. Am I taking whatever the result of this assessment is and sort of always presenting my sort of #1 top line security package to the client, or am I gonna, like, does it really matter what the outcome of this assessment is? Am I always leading with that top line, or if I have multiple packages, should I align a specific package for this customer?
It's a good question. I think I think with all these things it varies. So I think most of the time you're unlikely to see 100% success rate. You're not going to be 100% secure all the time. So the end user is very unlikely, even if you're providing their services, they're incredibly unlikely to be at 100% at all times. So I think it's always something to work towards. I think most MSPs will have a stack of services that would defend people from most things. And then there's going to be that custom element on the end as well of project work that, most end users aren't, you just don't just take them out of the box. They're not all the same. I mean, you can't just go and approach them and say, actually, this is the tip box for you. This will sort all your problems out and you'll be absolutely fine from this point forward. There's an ongoing relationship. So I think that there's a variety of different products and bundles, and I think it's good to have a bit of flexibility. But a lot of MSPs that I meet have a vast number of services, and they try and be a jack of all trades, and it's a really difficult thing to do. And just by condensing those services into a stack of services that are a bit easier to consume, I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah,
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. It kind of leads into another one I was sort of thinking of, which is, if I have these different bundles, and I'm not always leading with sort of that top line or top of the line kind of package, do I start then? Should I start small and then get them to sort of on board with my security offering and then increase over time? Should that be the goal, like to step them up, or is it really going to vary based on client to client?
I think that most of the time people have an idea of what they want to spend and what they want for their money. I think it's rare to get a customer that comes out and says, actually, unless you're in a tender environment or something like that, it's rare to get a customer that comes out and says, actually, hit me with the biggest bundle of products you've got. Normally people work up to it. You don't go out and buy a Rolls Royce as your first car. You then start at the bottom and slowly progress. So I think that's a common way for customers to progress. So yeah, I'd suggest going in with the core bundle. You can sometimes upsell in the meeting, when you go and meet them for the first time, but it's reasonably rare.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fair. And yeah, I guess the last one, just sort of round out that part of the discussion, was we obviously talk about the fact that security changes all the time, right? So there's, next month there could be something different. Next year there's going to be 10 things that are different. So should I, as a service provider, be updating my service offerings with these new products, new services, and just roll them out to my clients? Or does each sort of new product represent a new sales opportunity for me? What do you find most of your partners doing?
So we have some partners that, obviously all of our partners, it's very rare to get a partner that just works with a single vendor. I didn't used to, I don't meet many people that do. Right. I think there's an advantage to having a small number of vendors. And I think that means that you can then begin to look at maybe trading out one product for another. I meet a lot of MSPs actually who come to Barracuda and they look for either backup or email security. They're both very popular at the moment. And I'll often go and meet them and they'll say, actually, I've got 4 different backup providers and I've got 3 different email security vendors, and I'm trying to consolidate, and I don't really know how it all works. And their challenge is to move everything that they're doing into one vendor. And when they meet someone who can do everything, they say, actually, that's a lot easier because it's less to think about. And I think so. I think there's some advantages there.
Right. So if I was offering a backup service to my client, if I switch backup vendors, it's not necessarily something I would resell onto my client. But if I added a new offering on top of backup, then that would be something I would go out and sell.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool.
I think they were good questions. Thank you. So if anyone would like some more information, we have a website with a demo link, barracudamsp.com/demo. Please do get in touch.
Yeah, and same thing on the Auvik side. If you're not yet an Auvik partner and want to learn a little bit more, we do have a free account for 14 days. So you can head to auvik.com and do that. Or if you're already an Auvik partner and want to learn more about how you can leverage Auvik to do some of the things we talked about today, you can reach out to your Auvik rep and we can definitely answer those questions. So I think now we want to open it up for any Q&A. If there's any questions out there, you can drop them in the chat panel or the Q&A panel. I'm watching both here. I'll just give it a few seconds for people to pop something in there if you do have questions. I had picked out a couple that had come into the panelists there already. So, all right, not seeing anything else come in. So maybe Caitlin, pass it back to you.
Yeah, so thank you to everyone for joining us for today's webinar on achieving higher profit margins by selling security as a service. The recording will be available on demand at auvik.com/frankly-MSP within a few hours. I just want to take this time to thank both Steve and Andy for joining us and sharing these awesome tips today. If you guys wanted to keep the conversation going after this, you can join us after the call on the Frankly MSP community on LinkedIn. It's a space for MSPs to connect and share ideas on how to run their businesses more effectively, productively, and profitably. The link will be in the panel right after this presentation and will be there to field any questions you might have about what you've learned during this webinar. So thank you again for everyone who attended, and bye for now.